At this time yesterday, none of us knew how to build a log cabin. And this morning, you've got a group of people out here just throwing it up like it's no big deal. That's the magic of the system that I'm showing you today. It's an absolute perfect morning to learn how to build a log cabin. And in this video, my intention is that we're going to show you from the ground up how to build a log cabin that is a little bit different maybe than what you have in mind when you hear the words log cabin. Now, this is not a completely finished unit because obviously you would have these gaps filled in. But this is an existing version of what we're working on. And this is what a roof would look like for it. One possible way you could do a roof. Obviously, there are different options. Now, some of you may be looking at this structure and thinking that's kind of ugly. And I just wanted to point out that your cabin that you built would never at any point look like this. This was a roughed in cabin that never got any finishing, and it got weathered without the chinking. And that's why it looks the way it does. So we're out in Branson, Missouri. Absolutely beautiful country. My family comes here a lot for vacation. I'm out on this awesome property and I'm excited to get started. So here we've got some beams that they've already got cut that we're going to be using.
Need a biscuit?
Those didn't come out of a can, did they?
No. No.
I'll give it a try.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I guess I need to back up just a little bit and tell you guys where I'm at. I am at a log cabin building training event. This is a 3-day event that is 9 hours a day if you include the time allotted for lunch. So it's essentially 24 hours of training on how to build a stacked beam log cabin. The event is hosted by Dovetail Cabin Tools. If you're interested in building a log cabin or a stacked beam log cabin like this, it's a really cool event where you can come in and, you do have to pay to attend, but I think if you're actually building a log cabin, there's going to be investment in this process. And I think going through this training is going to help you so much to get the results you're looking for. This is always a fun little idea. This is where we're at. And this is my pen where I'm from. You see, we've got people here from Idaho and New Jersey, New York, Virginia, all over the country, just in this first class of hopefully many classes they do. The traditional building method for building a log cabin requires a lot of skill and time and patience. And essentially what this company has done has simplified the process so that anyone can learn in a day how to build with this method, and you don't need all that expertise. If you go to dovetailcabintools.com, you can order this jig. You slide the jig onto your beam and you use this end to square it up. You put roller guides on your chainsaw bar and those guides fit over these two posts. You slide that roller down, cuts your beam off square. And then you flip the jig around and you've got these guides, and your chainsaw bar once again fits over these guides. You run the saw down it, and just following the guides cuts you a perfect dovetail that stacks together and interlocks. This is a fully hands-on training program, so no one is here to watch. Everyone who came to the event is going to cut multiple dovetails on these beams themselves. So this is the very first one being cut this morning, but we all get a shot at it. And if anyone's worried about hitting the guide system with the chainsaw and ruining the chain, they've built it in a way where that is basically impossible. It has stops built in. This beam is being cut in half because when you're stacking and alternating your layers, that first layer, if you just started with one direction, that first layer, you'd have a big gap. So you need a full beam on two sides, and the other two sides need a half thickness beam. And then you've established your pattern, and you just repeat from there. So Really, you only have to saw that first beam in half. Now, some of us already have sawmill experience before attending this event, but they did sawmill training for people who don't have that experience. They also did some chainsaw safety training.
Go on this side of the mill? Right here. Carol, right here, like this.
Okay.
And we got the top up on one of them. Yep. Now, we're building a 16 by 16 building, so I just threw a couple plat deals out here 16 feet apart. When we get these two logs on here, then we can go to leveling it and squaring it. Okay. Now, as we stack the walls, it'll be obvious. Let's roll it this way, half a roll. There you go, just like that. As we stack these, the easiest, if you're doing a saddle notch where you got logs sticking out like this, you got something to catch it if it falls off. Dovetails you don't. So what I like to do when I'm stacking, especially when you start getting up in the air a little bit, is I pull this over where it just barely hangs over on both ends. Yeah, pull that one to you just a breath.
Actually, it's got the log that'll come to me some.
Okay.
Whoop, not that one. That looks good.
If I pull that over just a little bit, when I roll it over, it'll stay there. Otherwise, it falls on the ground. Okay, let's just roll it up. See how that works?
So this part's probably obvious, but I'm going to say it anyway. You see, we're basically building that on the ground. There's a couple reasons for that, but you wouldn't obviously actually build your cabin directly on the ground. That bottom is going to rot. And this one's built on the ground, but it's just here as a demonstration. So the way they recommend that you build one of these cabins is you cut all your beams, and as you cut them, you stack them and fit them together. And then once you have a lot of beams cut, you build a foundation floor that's going to be the inside floor of the cabin. And then you disassemble this and reassemble it onto your floor. Now, that's not required, but one of the reasons that you would do that is it can be a long process, especially if it's a big structure. It can be a long process getting all your beams cut. And so if you build your subfloor and then you start stacking these beams on top of it, how long does that take? And if it takes a long time, then you're going to be getting rain on your subfloor and trying to protect it and all of these things. So if it's going to take you months to get all your beams cut and stacked and measured and get everything right, you don't want your subfloor sitting there. So the way they do it is they stack their building like this. Once all these are cut and all of that is done, then they build their subfloor and then just restack it on there, and you can restack the building in a day. And normally I was concerned, because I'm usually cutting dimensional lumber, I'm concerned about drying and warping and things like that. But with these bigger beams, that's much less of a problem. But if you did have any shrinking or warping or anything, in this scenario where you've dry stacked it, it's all held together and it's going to fit back together. So again, to repeat what he's just been teaching us over here, if your logs have any bow to them, and it's not going to be dramatic, but the logs also aren't going to be perfect. So if there's any bow, you put the bow up and you put the bow out, not down or in. And before you cut your dovetails, you're deciding in and out. And they put a mark on the top and an arrow pointing out so they know the orientation of the log before making the cut. All right, so I've grabbed one of our instructors here, Randy, to ask him a few questions about these buildings. You were telling us in there that you've been building log cabins for a long time.
Yes, sir. Fortunate. I built my first log home in 1978, and we've been building them ever since.
That's 2 years before I was born, so that's quite a bit of experience. And have you built a lot of different types of log cabins?
If you can imagine it, we probably built it over the years, and part of it went with what was fashionable at the time. And then from little bitty buildings, school bus sized buildings, bus stops, to mega mansions and mega lodges.
I go to a lot of trade shows, and that's where I found these people that are putting on this expo with this Dovetail product, this Dovetail jig. And a lot of times at these expos and these trade shows, there's a lot of gimmicky products. And so what I was kind of wondering for myself and for the viewer, like, is this a legitimate building technique that you would actually use? And is this type of structure, I mean, is this practical for a home that you're going to live in?
The sample that we're building here in the yard is obviously a small building. So that would be more of a mountain type cabin. But basically what we're trying to expose here is the concept of how you build. You can build it any size you want. So to answer your question, would this make a realistic home? Absolutely, you just make it bigger. And with his new notch cutter that he has, the splicing log, you can make any length log you want out of it as well, which is pretty incredible.
And with this type of because your finished product, when you're done with this, you're going to have your chinking in the middle, but it's going to be a rough log like this. Is that a durable, long-lasting material for building a home with?
All of us have seen old 100-year-old plus buildings around the country that are still, you take a pocket knife and you scrape the wood off and it's still bright white wood underneath it. And so, but with the blessing that we have nowadays is we got good finishes, you know, with good chinking material, good finishes, long eaves, things we can common sense use to help preserve the wood just by trying to keep as much water off as possible is the biggest thing you can do for long term.
All right. Well, hey, thanks for taking time to tell us about it. And now I'm going to go through and learn how to build one of these.
Perfect. Perfect. And then just tip it up in the knots and we're in good shape. Shove things together. We've got 1/10 of a building built in no time. There's 10 courses in that one. We got 1 course down. Isn't that amazing? Our first log here is level, so that's going to be our basis right here. That's the uphill corner. I can look at the land and I know what's going to be the high piece of land. So that's what I'm going to make close to the dirt. I'll build up everything else. I don't want to start down here downhill because then I can't get that down low enough. You know, so just look at your land, pick your high spot, and that's your base corner that you can start with. Okay, dumb luck. This log is level. We just threw the level up here. We don't need a fancy gadget or nothing else. This log here, well, I don't know what we did wrong, but it's almost level too. It might take 1 shim. Let's pick this up and we'll put this under there. Maybe it'll get a little bit closer. Okay, perfect. Okay, but I can bet money that this is lower than that. We're going to find out how much we have to raise it up. Quite a bit. So in 4 feet, I'm going to have to raise it about 3 inches in 4 feet. So I got 16 feet, so I'm going to have to raise this almost, what, 7, 8 inches? I know that right off the get-go. So let's put this under here and see how close that gets us. What's that do to the level?
A little more.
Yeah, okay, let's put one over, let's put a big one over here on this one too. Probably that much more again.
I think a lot of us have a tendency to make things more complicated than they need to be. And here, Randy showed us a really simple method for leveling and squaring the building, as you'll see next.
When I put a tape measure on it, it showed me that this measurement here was 22 feet 11 inches. That measurement was 22 feet 7 inches. Okay, that's 4 inches difference. Simple math. I know that this end has to come over. When this end comes over, this measurement gets shorter. When that end goes that way, that measurement's going to get longer. So if I slide this 2 inches, half of 4, I'm going to be right on the money. It's that simple.
Now, if you were building a 3,000 square foot home with all different rooms and even maybe some elevation changes, it would be a little more complicated than this. But for a simple square log cabin, just simple techniques are all that you need. And he did a great job of demonstrating that.
Shove it out a little bit. There you go. Good. Ready? Boom.
That's too soon to tell, but my plan is I don't think I'm going to dry stack the way they're recommending. Because if you get your beams all prepped like this, and with the small cabin I'm planning to do, I think with the starting point of having a stack of beams like that, you could do all the dovetails and stack the entire cabin within a couple days. And if it's going up that quick, then you don't have to build it twice. The reason that they build it twice is more related to time or space constraints, and when they're building a bigger cabin. So if you're building a 3,000 square foot home you're going to live in that has all these rooms and all these different things, it changes it. But I'm probably doing a 16-foot square cabin. Now, if you're actually building a log cabin, there are several other things that you have to learn, and I'm going to try to cover some of those as we go. But the actual process of constructing walls that fit together and, make the majority of your structure is just incredibly simple with this technique. And, on one hand, you're kind of assuming that a person has the ability to, get logs and mill their own beams like this. But also, I inquired about the fact that you can buy these beams. And I estimated the cost on a small square cabin like the one I plan to build at around $5,000 or $6,000 to buy the beams pre-milled with this same rough cut look that we're seeing here. Now for me, it's much more rewarding and obviously more affordable to do the entire thing from scratch with trees you cut down yourself. And for the cost of buying the lumber, you could also buy a mill and then you have it from now on. But it really is remarkable that only a couple of the 20 people who are here for this event have ever done anything like this before, but within a couple hours, we could have done it without the instructors. And that's just not something that's ever been the case with building a log cabin in the past. You either had to have tons of skill and specialized tools to carve out the logs so that they could fit together, or you had to buy the entire kit prefabricated, which is much more expensive. I'm usually cutting dimensional lumber, and I'm always concerned about where the pith is going to be. That wherever the pith is, you're going to get a warped board. It's going to dry differently, and what I've learned from being here is that with beams this size, it does not matter where the pith is. They're perfectly happy having that pith in the center of this, or even if it's, not in the center. If, say, the pith was split and you were able to get two beams out of one log and the pith was kind of on the edge of them, says it doesn't really hurt anything with this kind of build. So this right now is just dry stacked. But if this was a finished building, setting on a foundation, we would not be just stacking these. But you're also not using a lot of fasteners. You're going to use one heavy-duty screw designed for this. And I can actually put screws in the video description for what you're looking for. But you're going to countersink one screw into this joint right here. And then in between, every so often, you're going to run a screw through this beam into this one with a spacer block in between. So we're not just trusting the log height to maintain that gap and then filling it with chink. We are putting in spacers periodically and then running a screw through them. So these are the types of screws you're going to use for this. It's going to have a Torx or an Allen head on it. You're going to countersink it on the dovetails, but you don't have to countersink it out in the middle. So you can see most of these gaps are sealed up really well but they're not airtight and watertight. And there are actually a couple of different ways of managing the way you clamp the jig on. And we've got a lot of different people who are doing the measuring, and so there's a little bit of variation in the way these joints are cut. But you're not just trusting on the wood to be a perfect fit. You're going to run a bead of caulk where you see me running my finger in kind of an L shape there, in between each joint before running the fasteners. And here's an example of how that looks. That's just going to help keep water and air from passing through the seams. One question a lot of people might have is, what is the R value of a wall like this? And it's a little bit deceiving because there is R value as far as how efficiently does this block the transfer of heat. And an R value on a 6-inch wall like this might only be R11 or R12. But there's another phenomenon that really affects that, and that is thermal retention. So right now, this wood is hot. There's a bunch of saved heat inside this building. So if it's cold outside and you heat your building, you're going to have more heat passing through this than like a 6-inch R19 insulated. But once the building's heated, then this wood stores a lot of heat, and your fire goes out at night, this stored heat is going to keep your building warm longer. So it can actually feel like it's better insulated than what the R value tells you. So you're going to do chinking on the outside, and you're going to chink it the same way on the inside, unless you choose to frame an interior wall inside of this, which gives you the ability to run your wiring through that and change the interior aesthetic. But I think for most people, you're going to leave this, and this is going to be the inside finished look of your wall. And so you're going to have that same chinking on the inside. So when you look at this exterior, it's not very appealing. It looks so rough, and it's got those gaps, and obviously you can't have those. So this is unfinished for a reason. It's used for demonstration. I'm getting ready to show you how these gaps get filled, and there's a couple different options. Now we're going to show you right now a product that they call, or a process they call chinking. And I guess it's all called chinking, but there are fancy chinking products that have a lot of benefits to them. And if your whole purpose is that you want to build this as affordably as possible, you're cutting down trees off your own property, you're running them off of your own mill, and this is costing you very minimal amount of money, you can also just put concrete in here. And they said like a small cabin like this, you might spend $2,500 or $3,000 on the high quality chinking. You could do the whole thing in concrete for like $200. The chinking is going to be a lot quicker to install. It's going to look nicer. It's going to have a higher R value. You can choose if you want a contrast or if you want the colors to all be the same. Then another choice you can make is, do you want to leave this rough like this? That's really rough. Or he's got a tool that lets you sand that down and make it perfectly smooth. And that's just an aesthetic choice, really. So once your structure's up, you're going to stain the wood and then put your chinking in, or the other way around, because you can stain over the chinking, but it could affect the color of your chinking. So your finished chink joint looks like this. Now this stuff isn't set up yet. It's still soft because it was just installed yesterday, and I don't know how long it takes to harden. But you don't just put this in by itself. You start off by putting this foam backer in. And there's a bunch of different ways you can do it. You can get straight flat pieces. You can get square pieces. You can get these round pieces like this. And you poke that in, and then you want a 1/4 inch thick layer of the soft chinking material. And so you just poke that in that far. Now, what our trainer said he likes to do is get an oversized round piece like this and cut it in half, and then you're basically getting twice as much material for your money, and then force it in there pretty tight. Then after you do that, you can see kind of how this looks. And you know, this is where they were letting some of us just experiment with spreading this. And he said the best way to do it is make yourself or buy yourself a piece of a flat trowel that's about this thick, spray this down with water, and then you just fill this like a caulking on anything else, and then just spread it thin. And once it starts to harden like this, you can't mess with it. It just makes a mess. You need to get it smooth when you first put it in, and then just leave it alone. So there are several different companies that make the chinking product, the synthetic chinking product. And this brochure came from one of those. And obviously they've got a lot of pictures in here of how different types of log homes can look, you know, with their products in them. You can go from something really basic to something very fancy. You can get the chinking in like a 5-gallon bucket at a lot more economical. You can also get it in tubes, which is easier to apply. And then they've got their stains too. But these are a list of the colors that you can order the chinking in based on how you want your cabin to look. So you're about to see a conversation where I ask our log cabin building expert about a couple of choices here for how you handle it if either your log is not long enough to cover the entire run of a wall, or if you're adding doors and windows. Because you could build the entire cabin out of solid logs, then come back in later and just cut out your doors and windows. And he's going to give us kind of his preference why you might do your one door on each wall as you cut it. So like these, we cut the dovetail into a short beam, and that helps us use shorter or twisted material. But you wouldn't necessarily, if this wall had 3 windows, you wouldn't necessarily do all 3 windows and have a bunch of short pieces out in the middle that weren't locked together with dovetails and could shift and move on you and would make it harder to square it up. And then we're going to talk about what happens if your run of this wall was 20 feet, but you couldn't get logs that long. And that's going to happen with a splice jig. So when you're cutting in a door, you do this on every layer? You would never just build it and then cut it out? Or
2 reasons. One, it's handy sometimes to get inside your building as you're building, especially the higher you get. If we got a log here, we want to roll it into place, and we're standing right here, it's dangerous. So if we can stand on the inside and roll it this way, it's a lot safer. So access in. And then this log's loose, be careful when they set it on there. So you guys act like you've done this before.
Ready? Yep.
Let's see.
Perfect.
do you only do that with the doors, or if this wall had a door and a window there, are you piecing that as you go as well?
In the yard when I'm prefabbing it, like we are here, I don't have to have a bunch of little pieces that I'm trying to brace up. Because if I put stickers on the outside, then it's going to discolor underneath it. It's going to be white and discolored everywhere else. But also when I tear it down, if I pick up a 3-foot piece with a crane or a 30-foot piece of crane, it takes a crane just as long. So the more big pieces I can put on the truck, the less handling I'm doing. And then when I get on the side, I can cut the windows and deals.
So while we've had a quiet moment here, I've snagged Jared. Now, Jared invented this product and manufactures them all himself. And we've got a little bit different jig here than the one I've already shown you. So I'll let you tell him what this is and what purpose it serves.
So this is a splice jig. So if you've got a couple of short logs and you're needing to make a longer log or whatever, it offsets the notch of your log to one side. So you can notch this log, and then the same jig will work on the log that you're joining to it. You just do the opposite side, and it makes sort of a simple scarf joint instead of just a regular lap joint. With this taper on here, when it locks together, if you put a single timber screw through it, it actually locks together, and it's a mechanical structural joint.
All right, so if I want a wall that's 20 foot long, but my mill only can handle 16, then you can make these splices, and they're structurally strong, and then you just make sure kind of to stagger the joints on those.
That's correct. This notch actually comes past the center line of the log. The center line actually crosses this joint out in the center of the joint here. So on the next one, when we cut this, it'll lay in there and just be a mirror image of this.
Can you tell us about the pin placement, where you would think the pin placement would be?
So you can do 2 timber screws or just a single one through the center, but I would go right straight down through the very center here. Go all the way. That's a pretty stout joint. I mean, that's a lot stouter than just a lap joint.
So I also really enjoy the story of how this product came into being. As a small business owner myself for quite a long time now, I enjoy any time I can support a small business. And this entire business is run from the home of a husband and wife team. Jared and Corey are from a family that has always been invested in building log cabins. They have a history with it, and they came up with a product to streamline that process. And all of the products are built right here in the shop at their house. So this business does not have a manufacturing facility. They don't place an order and then receive a pallet of this finished product off of their design. If you order this product from this company, every single one of the products they ship is made by the same guy in this shop where he lives. So you're going straight to the source. There's no middleman. All right, so we've been showing these saws running on the jigs this whole time, but we haven't really shown how that is accomplished. So essentially, whatever saw you're using, you're bolting on these guide bars here, and these come with the jig if someone buys a jig from you, correct?
Yes, that's correct. If you order a jig, each jig comes with one set of the bar guides, and it's a complete set. So you can outfit one chainsaw, and then you're up and running with the jig.
Okay, so these bars are hardened. Is the average guy going to be able to install those rollers, or could you give us a few tips for how to place them and how to drill into that hardened material?
Yeah, so they are hardened. It is hardened steel, hardened bars, which sounds intimidating, but they're really not that bad. If you've got a drill press, you want to turn it down on your very lowest RPM setting, and then just take it slow. You don't want to push too hard. If you get too much heat built up in that bit, it's going to ruin the bit. But if you just take it slow, you can drill a hardened bar. We even use the cheap Harbor Freight step bits that way you don't have to do a pilot hole or anything. You can just step on down to the 3/8. These are 3/8 holes.
Now, I've got a drill press, but maybe everybody doesn't. Could you do this with a hand drill, or at that point, would you be better off calling a local machine shop and ask them to punch a couple holes?
You could do it by hand. Most hand drills are not going to be accurate enough. You really want this to be as accurate as you can be. Whether you've got a friend that you can have him drill a couple holes for you, or take it to a machine shop or something, that'd really be the ideal way to do it.
Okay, what about placement?
So on our website, we've actually got a graph that shows exactly the spacing in between. Basically, the size of your log, if we're setting up for a 6-inch wide log, it's going to be plus 3 1/8 inches from center to center. So a 6-inch log, this is going to be 9 1/8. That's going to be the diameter of the bar guides. So once that's mounted on there, you just want to have enough room to get that on there. And then up from the center, or from the straight edge, let me get this flat on there. Up from the straight edge, 1.5 inches. So that bar guide is actually going to sit down about there. Then what did I tell you? 9 1/8 in between. So there's my 9 1/8. Oops. And you can see here, because of the curvature of this bar, I've got space between the straight edge and the tooth here and back here, but it's actually touching here. So I want to base it off of my straight edge. And then when I go to center punch these, I don't want the chain in because it'll actually bend that chain when I go and whack this with a hammer. All right, we can drill it. So again, this is just an inexpensive step drill bit. I know that the third step down is my 3/8 diameter that I'm shooting for. And oftentimes, depending on the bar, these steps are not quite going to reach all the way through the bar. So I'll have to drill down to where I hit my third step right there. And then I'll have to flip the bar over and just finish the hole.
This is not a machining video, and it's already going to be pretty long, so you can just take my word for it that he drills 2 holes from both sides with this step drill bit.
Now for this, all I'm doing, most folks aren't going to have this capability, but you can take it to a machine shop and have this done. All I'm going to do is take this hole that's closest to your sprocket, and I'm just going to elongate that into a slot. So I've got a little bit of adjustment, about 1/4 of an inch that direction and 1/4 of an inch this direction.
And you're doing that to both slots or both holes?
Just the one.
Oh, okay.
Well, we had to pick the highest side of the whole building, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. I'm still get worse.
Hold on, I'm gonna change it.
Oh, what happened?
You guys know how I am, and we just watched those guys drop one of those. I'm never having people help me lift that up. That's what I got equipment for. Tractor's gonna set those beams in place, or the mini skid's gonna set those beams in place, then we'll roll them by hand, but that's it when I do mine. So if you don't have a team of people, you see it, they're not even to full height yet, and it's taking 4 or 5 people to lift these beams up. If you don't have a team of people, you're either gonna have to use small beams, or you're gonna have to have some equipment. And I know most people watching my channel have equipment. You don't necessarily need something like this, but you at least need like a compact tractor to move these beams around. And actually, I think the most common thing is people dry stack 2 short buildings that will become one, and then they rent a crane for the majority of actually assembling it and doing the roof. So they make a lot of different size jigs. Basically, you decide how big you want your beams to be for your cabin, and then you get that size jig. And that's based on the trees you have available and the equipment you have to lift and what you want your cabin to look like, a lot of factors. I think I'm gonna do a 6-inch thick by 10-inch tall beam personally. So I mentioned at the start that this is a 3-day event, 8 hours or 9 hours per day. We're wrapping up day 1, and we have a 6-foot tall cabin standing there. Just because this is not a permanent cabin and it's gonna get taken down and just used for demonstration, I think this is about as high as we're gonna go. Tomorrow, we're going to work on different ways to build a roof for a building like this. And we're gonna build at least 1 roof for this building, but I think we're also going to go through the process of how you could build other types of roof. So it's been an exciting day, a lot of fun learning this, and I'll be back in just a few minutes with day 2. Good morning. So right now it is just about 10 a.m. and we've been here for 2 hours, and what we've done so far is just a classroom setting where our instructor, who's been building these buildings for 50 years, is walking us through things you might not have thought of before you start your cabin build. He's talking about how to set it up as you go so that when you need to run your electrical, that'll be easier to do, kind of walking us through all those finer points. And I want to share some of that with you. Then we're going to start building a roof structure. So one concern that some of us had is, how do you put electrical in here? And so there are different ways you can do it, but essentially, like if you know you want your plugins this high, as you do this row, you can go ahead and cut in your outlet box shapes with a router and drill through this and run that up through the floor. You can also do all your electrical in your interior walls. if you have them. But if you want outlets in your exterior walls, then you want to know where those are going to be beforehand so that you can have straight runs down. Because they used to put the electrical wiring in here in between the chinking, and that no longer passes code if you're someone who has to have your cabin inspected. Now, you know, I won't be having any inspection done or anything where I live, but for a lot of people that's a major consideration. And if they said you can't put that in the chinking, I guess they've got their reasons, but also people have been doing it that way for 100 years, or since they invented electricity, I guess. We also learned how you would do a building that wasn't a square. So the instructor gave an example of a building that was a plus shape. And so then you're going to have your exterior wall coming in and then back out. And you are going to have this exterior corner inside your building. So inside your finished house, you're going to have a corner that looks just like this. Now you could like round all these corners off, or maybe you like the look of it. But the way you accomplish that, so if this wall was coming down this way and then turning out this way, and that was going to be inside, essentially when you set your jig up, you're just going to have one end of it, the jig will be flipped over the opposite way. So this is not a second cabin that we're doing. This is the top of the other cabin. But because we're lifting everything by hand, there's no reason to lift it that high up in the air. And this is an initial dry stack, not a final stack. Now this is the top beam, and you'll notice there's no dovetail cut in the top. That is so that the rafters can set on, and a dovetail here without a piece fitting over top of it would just be like a place for air or water to get in. The cool thing about building a roof like this is that we're going to be able to build it all down at ground level where it's easy to access. So this is the top height of the wall. After that, we're putting straight beams with no dovetails, straight in cuts on them. And then each one gets a little bit shorter as we stack it up. And then when all these are put up, the angle will get cut on it. That's how we get this kind of look right here. The one we're building today won't have this type of a beam across it. It's going to be rafters. And these are just basically scrap 1-bys. Each of them has a toenail in it, just to keep this stack from tumbling over, because the rest of the building, all these are locked in at the joints. This is just stacked, and it looks like it's straight and it shouldn't fall, but you don't want to trust that and walk in front of it. So next, they're setting a center beam across those gable ends that the rafters are going to set on. And this is another step that is pretty straightforward. The most complicated of this entire roof build is figuring out how to cut the bird mouths, getting the angles right for the rafters to set on to that top support and onto the stud wall. I've filmed 1,700 videos for this YouTube channel, and honestly, this is one of the hardest videos I've ever done, because I'm trying to learn the information, and I'm trying to stay out of people's way when they're working, and I'm trying to help do some of the work. And a lot of the things I'm summarizing for you guys, I would have liked to get the instructor's full explanation in the video, but some of these explanations were 45 minutes on, you know, how to cut your bird mouths or how to figure out the pitch of your roof, and there was just no way that I could include all of that into a video that's a manageable length. So I really hope that you guys are enjoying this video and learning from it. But if you really wanted to build one of these, I would say your best bet is to go on to the YouTube channel for the company that makes this product, or actually attend their event where you can get a lot more detailed information. Now you see here, they're setting that first rafter on, and then they traced a line down the top of it showing where we needed to cut the gable walls off to get our matching angle. The coolest part about this event is the way everyone worked together, and it almost felt like it was a crew that had been working together for years. Once that first rafter pattern was made, we just, busted those out. And I say we, I didn't really do much. I was mainly watching, and these guys were just a well-oiled machine. All of the bird mouth and the angles for the top and the bottom were all cut with a chainsaw. And then these were all set into place and held down with lag bolts. So putting up the basic structure is very simple. And he didn't teach us a list of ways, he taught us the way to build this type of wall structure. But a roof is something different. A roof can be built to a quality standard 100 different ways. And on the chalkboard, he spent hours, and even out here with some demonstrations and some chalk lines, he spent hours teaching us different ways you could build a roof. But we can't build one of each in a 3-day class. So I think this is the type of roof I want. The type of roof we're building today is a little bit easier. So let's go take a look at the differences. So either type of roof we're looking at today, you're using spacers to continue your stacking pattern with your gaps, and your chinking remains the same. And the difference is the support in between these two gable ends. So in both systems, we're building a stacked gable end. But in this direction, we're using logs perpendicular to those gables as the support, and then rafters would still be placed on this to create a gap to put your insulation in. Now, if you're not insulating it, you could put your decking right on top of this. The version that I'm about to show you that we're building today has that same stacked end wall, but then it has actual rafters running up to a single center beam that is a square post, and it uses your bird mouth type cutouts on the rafters so that they set into place. So here you see one of the students cutting that angled cut to match up the end wall with the slope of the rafters. And this is something that takes a little bit of skill, and you might have a hard time with if you've never used a chainsaw before. Now, going through the rest of the build process, you're going to get that chainsaw experience from all of the work you have to do to get to this point. Now, before anyone started a chainsaw at the beginning of the first day, we did a pretty lengthy session on chainsaw safety and just understanding the dangers of what we're doing. The actual technique here is counterintuitive. You would think you would just cut all the way through and walk down, but we were taught to cut about 2/3 of the way through and then come back with a follow-up, and for some reason it really does seem like that gives you a better result.
That's what you do. As soon as you try one pass, you're going to know what's up and what's down. Turn it over. Put it upside down once.
Then upside down?
That's upside down. Don't work.
Yeah.
Okay, now put it right side up. There you go.
Yeah.
These wet logs are worse. The drier they are, the easier it is to peel.
When they're full bark, will it be the same?
Yeah, same thing.
I mean, it'd be as easy as what that is? I mean, I'm not saying it's easy, but
It's easy.
I mean, it's getting it done,
yeah, it's easy.
even if it's full bark.
Yeah, yeah. Especially if it's green bark, because then it kind of comes off like a banana skin.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's different species of wood. You know, if the bark's that thick, you're going to have to deal that. That's where you see a lot of companies that deal with logs that have real thick bark. They'll use a spud bar first.
Right.
And knock the worst of it off, and then come back and peel it with this. Just get the big bulk of it out of
See,
there.
I would think the opposite. I would think after it dries, it would come off of there easier.
You got to cut it all when it's dry, but it comes off easy. The trick is keeping this sharp.
Yeah, that's real sharp.
This is a chipper blade, and it's hard as steel, very hard steel. And this cut or this sharpened here is a little concaved, And we use an 8-inch disc on our sharpeners when we sharpen those, and it's razor sharp. You want to keep it protected. That little shield I had on it, keep them protected. And when you sharpen one, if you get one of these, you'll see a lot of guys sharpen them with a stone. And after a while, they get to dishing it like this. You don't want that. You want a straight edge. So that's the way you sharpen these things, is straight, not dished. Lots of times you'll come to a knot. What I always do, some species have a lot of knots on them, and peeling around knots is a pain in the butt. So what I do is I take my chainsaw, and I usually have kind of a junk saw. We call them a bump saw, and it can be little, it can be anything, because you're going to kind of dull it up a little bit, because there's going to be some dirt and stuff in this here. Knock the knots off. Knock the knots off flush, and that's called bumping them. And the reason we do that is because that chainsaw is going to make, one, you're getting rid of the knot, but two, the reason we do it now is because you're going to have some chainsaw marks where that knot was. And if you peel it afterwards, you take that chainsaw mark out. If you wait until the log's in the building and you come and knock that knot off, now you got a chainsaw mark, and how do I get rid of the marks?
You're taking off the meat, not just the bark, but you want to take meat off.
You're going after the look. You want to get the debris off, but the look. I'll show you in some places you see it. It ain't very common, it ain't very popular. They call it skin peel, where they leave a little bit of the cambrium layer, the brown stuff, you know. And I think that's kind of a 50s thing, to be honest with you.
And that gets off there, huh?
Can you buy this somewhere, or is it just homemade? Good plan.
Kind of fun, but I bet it'd wear you out a bit.
You get in shape, trust me. But that guy that peeled for me for 15 years, he was built like us. He was no big monster man, but he was in shape, I'll tell you that.
So I don't know how well you guys could hear the answer to that question, but Dovetail Cabin Tools either already is or will soon be selling this debarking tool that is a little bit unique and different from all the other versions on the market. Randy's been building these log cabins for 50 years, and this is the best homemade version he's ever seen, so they're going to produce it.
I don't want to sit in my lawn chair or my easy chair in my living room and look at that. So now's as good a time as any to try to get the bulk of it out. Let's see if I can. It's gone. So now when I'm sitting in my easy chair and I look at that spot, I ain't gonna pull my hair out.
So if you were building a traditional round beam log cabin instead of a square beam cabin, you'd be doing an awful lot of that. For our application, you would only be doing that like for this type of a roof system, where they're peeling the bark, you're getting that interior look of what he's finishing with there, and then you're milling a flat surface on the sawmill to match the slope of the roof. All right, so I've been trying to summarize what you've done, like half a day or almost a full day of teaching us about different roof types. But I'd like to try to give like a 3-minute version of it for the people watching this video. So I've filmed us building this roof structure, and I've shown that beam structure over there. So what I was kind of wondering, like factors that you would use to decide what kind of roof to put on your building.
Good question. Basically, it's going to boil down to personal preference. This system here that we got is what we call a rafter system. We got a ridge pole up on top, and then we run rafters perpendicular to it. Over there on that structure, we've got a purlin ridge pole system. Big ridge pole, purlins running full length parallel to them. The look is what you're after. It's going to just depend on personal preference and what the design of the building is. The capability, the snow loads, the aesthetics, and all that kind of stuff is really all the same. It's designed to satisfy the need.
Yeah, so I look at this and I say, this is pretty simple. I could do this.
Yep.
But then I think I'd like to see those exposed beams on the inside.
Yep.
So that's a reason to do that. But now my next set of questions is, let's say we build this roof.
Correct.
How would you sheet it or insulate it, or is there maybe different ways to do that?
Good question again. Both systems, this structural member is going to be exposed. Over there, we're going to put our ceiling material on top of that. When we're down in the building, down on the floor, and we look up, we're going to see the beams, and then we're going to see the ceiling material on top of that. Same thing here. We're going to put our ceiling material here. When we're underneath looking up, we're going to see all the beams, and then that attractive ceiling material, whatever it is we decide to use. And then on top of that, cathedral ceilings are called, end up being called what we call a cold roof. We have to have some place to put our insulation. So what we have with either system is we're going to have a rafter system on top of that. And that's the cavity that we're going to put our insulation in. There's a variety of kinds of insulation you can use. You can use spray-in cellulose or fiberglass or whatever, or you can use back fiberglass. You can use spray-in foam. There's a variety of different options. Kind of there again, it boils down to what you want. And in almost all climates, you're better off to shoot for a R40 roof. Heat rises in a building and you want winter protection. You also want summer protection. It gets blister hot outside. You want your house not to be influenced by that. So the depth of your rafter system on top of this is going to be influenced by what kind of insulation you use.
So I had another question, because I agree with exactly what you're saying, that if I'm doing a log cabin, I like the idea of being able to see these.
Yes.
But for ease of building and just being practical, could you put your interior, your 1-bys, whatever your interior sheeting that you're going to see is, under this, and then just lay an R19 in here and sheet over the top? Or would you not really recommend that?
To me, it almost takes away from a log building if you can't see the log members above you or timber members above you. Mm-hmm. It'd be just a big, smooth, flat ceiling is not as attractive as this would be. 99.9% of log homes are going to have a beam system of some sort above your head.
Okay, so you would attach on top of this,
yes, sir,
sheeting material, and then how would you put more rafters on top of that for a cavity for your insulation?
It's real simple. What we've got here is we've got a completely smooth surface once we put our decking material on top of here. And generally it's a tongue and groove type of material that we see people put on for ceilings. And the primary purpose of that decking that we're putting on is, one, it's holding the insulation up, and two, it's something pretty to look at. Now the structure part of in cavity for our insulation is going to be in the framing that we put on top of this. 2x6, 2x10s, 2x12s, whatever it is we need for depth of insulation. Foam insulation, 5 inches of foam insulation is R40. So we don't need a real deep roof. 10 inches of fiberglass is closer to R40. So we need a deeper rafter on top. So there again, what kind of insulation we want to use and how deep of a roof system we're going to have.
Our trainer is truly an expert on log cabin building. He's got all that experience and he's done it every way there is to do it. And here he taught us, how to build this type of a notched in structure. And it was a really neat experience watching him do it. I'm not going to add that into this video because I don't think it's necessarily relevant, but it was a very cool part of being here. And I'm just struck at the difference in the amount of expertise it takes to cut this and this to fit together, and the amount of time it takes compared to these dovetail ends. So this is my second video about this system for building cabins with this dovetail jig. And on the first video, people were interested and went and clicked and saw the price of the jig and were kind of like, why is it so expensive? And you've got to understand, besides the fact that this guy's building every one of these by hand himself, you're also talking about years invested in designing and perfecting this product and going through all the process of all the things you have to go through to start a small business. And so I totally get it. And now if you think about it, that you're building a home, what does it cost to build a home? And to say that this jig is going to save me from buying a $30,000 log cabin kit, because I'm going to buy this jig once and then I don't need a kit. I can do it all myself. So in the long run, this jig is going to save you a lot of money. So this has been an awesome experience, and I feel like I've learned everything I needed to know to go home and build one of these cabins, which is the goal of coming here. Now, what I really hope is that I did a good job of showing you guys a little bit about this process. Now, if you want to learn more, you can check out the Custom Dovetail Cabins YouTube channel. You can go on their website and order one of these jigs. You can even come to a training event like this. But as for now, I appreciate you taking time to watch the video. I'll put links on the screen to a couple more of our videos, and I'll see you next time.